Okay, so welcome to a new video. Now, just to clarify, this is from one coloring book across three different coloring books that I've recently had published. The first one made around $1,300 in that period. The second one made around $300 to $400 in that period. And the third one made around $40 to $50 during that period. So just a couple of things here before we start with this video. I want to make it absolutely clear that this has not been a case of just throwing one book up there and hoping that it makes sales, and then all of a sudden it did. There's been a lot more that's gone into it than that. I've been paperback publishing since 2018. I've had a lot of success and a lot of failures when it comes to creating coloring books, and that's going to be the point of this video, to show you how I've progressed from 2018 to 2022 specifically with coloring books. Okay, so another thing to make clear here is that yes, I did indeed spend money on ad campaigns for these books. I think in November I spent around $200 to $250 across those three books. And also what I will try and do during this video is to give an update as to how those books are performing during December and how much money I've spent on ads for them as well. So in this video, it's going to be one of those videos where I'm just talking. There's not going to be much else happening on screen. So I tend to do these type of videos, like an update story video every sort of 6 or 7 months. So if you like this type of video, you want to stick around for a KDP success and failure story, you're definitely going to enjoy this one. You're going to get a ton of motivation from it because it is 100% my real experience with KDP and the results that are attached to it, and you're going to get a lot of tips from this as well. So if you like these type of videos and you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you on board. Plus it helps me out if you like these videos and you do subscribe, because this is probably going to be my last video of 2022. There's more to come in 2023. It's going to be a big year, but like I say, I think this will probably be the last one for 2022. So I'd love for you to stick around and subscribe if you haven't already. So in this video, I'm only going to be talking about coloring books, nothing else, since my journey with coloring books has been filled with failures and successes, ups and downs, and a lot of money and time lost. So hopefully videos like this will help you to achieve the success, experience the ups, and not lose the money. So, and looking back actually through my journey has been quite rewarding for me, because I've been able to actually pinpoint the areas that I've screwed up and, you know, able to share that with you. Because the thing is, I've had kind of like 3 goes at the whole coloring book thing, like maybe over 30 to 40 books that I've published. The first time being in 2019, then in 2021, and then in 2022. And this isn't one of those videos that's going to talk about niches or keywords or things like that. We're going to touch on the side of things that no one ever really talks about as well, which is the whole mental side of building an income online. But saying that, there is going to be tons of tips here that are going to help you out as well. And I think you already know, if you watch my videos, this is probably going to be quite a long video, but you know what, stick around, it's going to be good. Okay, so let's kind of do this in a timeline way, and you're going to have to forgive me as per usual, as this might not be 100% accurate with the timing, but the contents are. So we're going to start with the failures back in 2019, everything that I did wrong there, and then work our way to 2022, where I've been publishing #1 new releases and making decent money from coloring books. Okay, so doing things this way, you're going to be able to see the things that I've done wrong and how I've turned things around to actually start producing good coloring books and making decent money from them, so that you can go ahead and implement these approaches into your publishing business as well. So this whole thing started back in 2019, the first batch of coloring books, and at this point I jumped onto the whole low content book scene. I published which was literally hundreds of books at that point. I got extremely disheartened because they weren't selling. I did the whole KDP saturated thing, and then I moved on to the next shiny object, which was to be coloring books. Okay, so most of those low content books, in fact probably 99% of them, I just unpublished because they sucked and they just kind of felt weird and dirty having them on my account. There's nothing wrong with them particularly, it just felt kind of bleh. So I think at the time I actually watched a video that was about producing unicorn coloring books and how they were just like some hot selling niche that you had to get onto. And I thought to myself, that looks like a good idea. I looked on Amazon, other people were selling them, so I went ahead and I hired someone, like the absolute cheapest illustrator that I could find, and I had like 10 different books that I created. Okay, so one was like a unicorn coloring book, or I can't remember, like maybe 3 of them were like unicorn coloring books. I'd kind of mixed them in with like mermaids and fairies and things like that. And I had like, I can't remember, it was really like low quality books, but I had like 10 to 15 of them made, I think it was at the time. But it was those kind of like, do you know those videos like if you've ever seen like a side hustle channel video where they're promoting like multi-function software, whatever it is, they show you like how to create the book cover really quickly and how to shove it up on Amazon. It was kind of like one of those books where it was quite obvious that there was no care put into it whatsoever. It was kind of just trying to make money from the niche itself. So basically I quickly put all those pages together that the person had done for me. I made the book cover myself in Canva, made the title and the subtitle with absolutely no thought put into it whatsoever. I shoved it up onto Amazon, and I think I made a total of like, over the course of that month, maybe 2 sales from those 10 to 15 books, which means that I basically wasted a load of time and some money as well. So I did once again what any respectable person would do, and try and find someone or something else to blame, something that wasn't me, and just pointed the finger once again at the whole KDP is saturated thing. Because it's weird, isn't it? The whole Amazon is saturated thing is the easiest way of getting yourself out of doing something bad, basically. And even though I don't believe in that now, I 100% believed in it back then in 2019, when Amazon was supposedly, like, publishing through KDP was supposedly supposed to be this wonderful opportunity where you could upload whatever you wanted and start making sales. But it just isn't the case. It wasn't the case then. And it definitely isn't the case now, because it is even more competitive now. But even back then, doing things badly meant that sales weren't going to come in. And this is one of those things where, looking back at it, it's impossible for me to say or to acknowledge this at the time. But when you do something, or when I was doing something bad or doing something wrong, it was so easy just to blame something else, because looking back at it now, it is just rubbish. That is complete mental coping, basically. And I think that was one of the first sort of big reality checks that I had when it came to publishing these books, is that it isn't easy. No matter what anyone says anywhere on the internet or whatever, it definitely isn't easy. So what mistakes do I think that I made during this first attempt at publishing coloring books? Did I even do anything right? So let's start with the first big thing here that I actually got right, and that was to actually do it, to actually give it a go. Had I not tried and failed with this pursuit, I'd never have gone on to produce some of the coloring books and books that I have produced that give me the income and lifestyle that I have now. And even though the sales figures are a massive failure from 2019, a lot of people are actually way too scared to go through with their desires, because they're scared to fail. And I didn't care too much about failing during this period, but at least I went through and did it. Because no matter what anyone says, like, you're not just going to be able to upload a few books. And no matter what information you're taking, whether it's from Chris's channel or whoever's channel, no matter where you're taking information from, no matter how good and accurate that information is, it's still going to be an individual journey. So you are going to get things wrong. You are going to have to take time doing this. And I think one of the big things is that you just get started with publishing some books. And that's the only thing that I think that I got right here. Okay, so let's talk about what I got wrong here. Now, I think it's really important that we go over the things that I was getting wrong here, because these are probably mistakes that people are making with every single book that they're producing, even in 2022, and mistakes that people will continue to make throughout 2023. Okay, so the first big thing that I got wrong here, so please don't shoot the messenger with this one, is, like I say, I quit and blamed someone else. And I know a lot of people don't respond well to this type of criticism and will just happily point their fingers at everyone else and never swallow that whole "actually I'm lazy, entitled, and suck at something" pill, because the reality is that there's no secret to it. Like, no matter how hard you will look for that secret that people aren't telling you, you're never gonna find it. And I found this out the hard way, especially after quitting like this first batch of coloring books, is that there's no one tip, I don't think, that someone's gonna tell you. There's no like niche or ad campaign or anything like that. It's just going to change your publishing success. This is a very individual thing, and it will take you some time to actually find out what works for you. However, I do think there are mistakes that people make, and that's what I'm going to be covering throughout the story in this video here. But the big thing here, massive thing, mental block here to get past for a lot of people, is that there is nothing out there. There's no quick way of doing this. You're not going to find it. If you're one of those people that's continually searching for the next big thing, the next big niche, or the next big strategy, you're never going to find it. And like I say, this is kind of what I was relying on during this period here. I was like, you know what? I hope the niche is going to carry me, and I don't have to think about anything else because the niche was so good. Someone was telling me it was a hot niche or whatever. And you know, there are some times where you can find niches that are hidden, and you will be, if you are like the first into it, and you can make sales. That's happened to me. It's very unlikely, but we're talking about, you know, like when it comes to coloring books, competitive niches, you know, you can't just rely off of the niche within that, if that makes sense. So the next big mistake that I felt like I made here, and since I'm someone that has to delegate certain tasks when it comes to publishing, because I don't have any skill when it comes to illustrating for these coloring books, the second mistake that I made here, and it kind of pains me to say it because I like giving people work. I like communicating with my designers. I like giving them extra incentives and fun bonuses to work towards, discussing projects and paying them well. But during this period, I hired the biggest idiot I could possibly find. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened to be the first person who was willing to do the job for a really tiny price. And the work that they did was pretty average at best. Of course, you know, I should expect that since I wasn't investing that much money into a better illustrator, basically. And at this point, it didn't even cross my mind that the interior of the book was incredibly important. I know that sounds stupid, but this is the thing. A lot of people upload books, and the interiors, they just don't care about it because they're too fixated on the niche, the titles, the subtitles, the back-end keywords, the ad strategies. They just forget what the absolute basics are when it comes to publishing a book. You know, this is a product that someone is going to be receiving. So if you want the long-term success, you have to have a good interior. And it just didn't, it's weird. It didn't cross my mind. And I know a lot of people still operate like that. You know, I was so fixated on this hot niche that I just had to get the book out there before everyone else did, and the niche alone would just carry it to success, which it didn't. Okay, so I used Fiverr at the time to hire someone, and looking back at it, God knows how they created those images. Luckily, I've unpublished all of those books a long time ago. I don't think they were using images from Google or anything like that. It's just when they made them, they looked weird, is what I will say, and they didn't have any good feedback. And yeah, you know. So moving on to mistake number 3, which was the book cover. So coloring books on Amazon, a lot of the books that sell really well, they've got absolutely gorgeous covers, like really nice niche appropriate covers. So what did I do? I made mine in Canva in about 20 minutes, and it completely sucked. I didn't even use any images from inside the book on the front of it, just some kind of royalty-free ones that looked decent, and then, you know, whatever text looked decent at the time, put it all together in Canva. I think it was Canva anyway. It certainly didn't look particularly good. People do judge books by their cover, 100% they do. Granted that there are some kind of lame-looking books on Amazon that sell really well, but they shouldn't be our standard. They might have gotten lucky. They probably got an external push, or, you know, publishing backing or something like that. They might have been early to the niche. It's really hard to say, but the main thing is that we don't want to use them as our standards, and that's kind of what I was doing, just, you know, putting it together and hoping for the best. And I know some people can make a really good cover in Canva, and I feel exhausted making this point all the time, but just because you can create something easy in Canva, it doesn't mean you should. And this is my problem that I had. I had no idea, and I still have no idea really, with anything design related. I just made the cover in Canva for free because that's what people do, right? And I think another part of the problem here is that YouTube is plastered with people pushing the idea that you can create book covers really quickly and make good sales of them, because, you know, it is possible, but for the most part, a lot of us won't be able to do that. And I've spoken to probably hundreds of people over the last couple of years who are doing this, and then not having any success. But the main point here that I'm trying to make is that I made a really bad looking book cover, and I think it's very hard to understand what your own abilities are sometimes. And I think you just need to ask yourself, like, how long have I been creating book covers? Have I got any prior experience with like graphic design or anything like that? And if the answer is no, no matter what your friends and family are telling you, you're probably not that good at it. So the best thing that you can do, obviously, is to hire someone who knows what they're doing, okay? And that's the problem when it comes to trying to sell coloring books on Amazon, is that a lot of people don't want to invest money into having a really good product made. So moving on to mistake number 4, I think this is. Now, had you asked me back in 2019 or 2020 if I thought the problem with my book was KDP being saturated with these type of books, I probably would have said yes. But it's not necessarily the competition that was the problem. It was how I positioned my book within that competition, okay? So Amazon has been highly competitive for years, way before Chris Radog or Paul Miles or whoever has, contributed to the flooding of the marketplace with their YouTube channels or anything like that. There's not really, from my experience anyway, there's not really been a time where you could just publish a book and make easy sales. In fact, I thought 2018, 2019 was the time where you could just like produce any kind of book and make sales, which is weird because my income since then is like 10 times basically, from only publishing in competitive niches with less books. So the problem here is not the saturation, it's how the book is actually being presented to the marketplace. So the mistake that I made here was thinking that I could just upload a book and see it hit the first pages, catch on fire, and then make sales overnight. And I'm very aware at this point in the video that I'm not offering solutions, but as we go through this, you're going to be able to see the changes and the shifts that I made, okay? But the fact is, Amazon is competitive. Everyone wants a piece of this, but luckily, for 95% more, whatever, of the people, they're still operating like 2019 me was doing, and not actually thinking about where the book is going to end up or what they need to do to get exposure to their book. Okay, so again, as we go through this video, you're going to see the things that I've changed to make sure that my book gets onto the first pages and starts getting eyes on it. But it is a big problem for a lot of people, is that trying and just not thinking about where the book is going to end up. Like, why have you chosen the title for your book the way that you have? Why have you picked the keywords or whatever? Why have you picked a niche? Where's your book going to end up? People don't think about these things, and when you don't think about things in a mechanical way, your book ends up getting lost. Okay, so if you're uploading coloring books, shoving them up there, you need to know that lots of other people are doing the same thing. Okay, so the chances of you getting just thrown onto a front page for a competitive keyword is going to be quite slim. So mistake number 5 now is not caring about the other person, basically the person at the end of it all who's actually going to be receiving this book. And this is a massive issue that so many people have lost track of, and I think we've lost touch with reality here to the point where we operate like Amazon is a money printing machine for us. We are selling things to humans at the other end, people who are actually looking for something specific to enhance their life in one way or another. And I literally did not care what was being sold. Like, the images I had were probably not that appropriate for the age group, because I think it was for kids books that I was producing then. In fact, I didn't even have an age group in mind. I just had the kind of dollar signs in my eyes glazing over with rationality. And trust me, people know what they want, and you have to deliver that to them. And if they do buy your book and it isn't what they want, you're going to get bad reviews and your book is going to fail. The real money with KDP is the long game. Like, you have to trust me here when it comes to a passive income, is that you have to think about long term. If you are producing, if you're taking like a week to produce a book that you've put no thought into, or a couple days that you put no thought into, is that book likely going to be thriving a year down the line? Is it going to have lots of 5-star reviews? Or is it going to die off after a month, after it gets like a 1-star review and then a 3-star review? But luckily for Amazon's customer base, I did not sell anywhere near enough to even get any sort of reviews on those books. So it doesn't even matter for me back then. And like I say, I unpublished those books because I don't believe in producing books like that anymore. Okay, so mistake number, I don't know, 6 maybe, whatever, obsessing over things that don't make much difference. So this is probably going to get me some hate for this one, I'd imagine, but during this period I was obsessed with like making sure that I had the right keywords, the right back-end keywords, and making sure that I had, you know, enough keywords in my book title and subtitle, and you know, making sure that the category was the best category that I could pick as well. And granted, a big part of my publishing strategy comes from targeting specific keywords for my book title, but during this period it was so overkill, especially you know, everything was keyword crazy, especially the 7 slot thing at the back end or whatever it is. People go absolutely mental over these things, and honestly I don't think they matter that much. I really don't. I think Amazon's algorithm, I think it's so smart to the point where everything is now just gearing toward giving you know, people what they want, high quality books, conversion rates, and things like that. Okay, and the other thing that I was going crazy over was the pricing for my book. You know, should I have 7s in the pricing? Should, you know, because 7 sell, or should it be $6.99 or $7? Well, whatever. And I've said this a million times in my other videos, because you know, we got publishing in reverse at this point. We focus on things that really don't matter and dismiss the things that really matter, and in some cases don't even think about the most crucial aspects of it as well. And listen, like, trust me, you can have the best, you can have the strongest, most profitable keyword or whatever they call it on the planet, but it won't mean anything if your book isn't desirable and cannot be found. And like I say, I found this out the hard way when I was like, why is my unicorn coloring book for kids ages 4 to 8 not making any sales? And it's because, like I say, everything is just gone into reverse, when in reality Amazon is going the other way from what we're actually trying to do. And I genuinely think the algorithm is changing over time to, you know, make sure that customers are getting good books, if that makes sense. So that was basically everything that I did right and wrong, mostly wrong, during 2019. It was across, like I say, 10 to 15 books. I can't remember how many it was, but that's pretty much everything. And I actually, like I say, I stopped producing those type of books during 2020. I think I stopped producing those sort of books. I focused on something else. I can't recall what that was. I think it was short stories. I think I can't remember. It was something like that. But basically, they did really well for me because it was something that it does sell well, and it's something that I'm reasonably good at. So I did all that myself. They started selling well, and I completely just gave up on the thought of producing coloring books. So it wasn't until 2021 I actually decided to give this another shot, given that I had a fair bit more experience with publishing, a little bit more money to put into this. So let's fast forward now to 2021. So this time I made around 4 or 5 different coloring books that were all geared toward adults. So they were pretty simple things. They were kind of like you know, like a butterfly coloring book or a cat coloring book, things like that. Nothing hidden, nothing special. And these books went on to sell. I think I might be able to get a screenshot up in a minute, but I think it was around 1,500 copies in about a year across those 4 or 5 different books, which admittedly is much better than 2019's efforts, but it's still, you know, it's still just okay, isn't it? Like, given how sought after coloring books are, I think 1,500 sales in a year, you know, it's okay. And they do continue to make sales to this very day. They've got like a 4.5 rating overall, and most of those sales come from just one of those books. So I think I actually made a video about this a while ago. I might have it on screen, but I was really stoked that I'd made like 200 sales in 2 months or something with them. Looking back, you know, at the time that felt like a massive achievement because it was improvement. But there's still a lot more that can be had from these type of books and publishing in general. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with dreaming bigger at this point. I know some people would kill to have 200 sales in 2 months, but I think, you know, it depends what you're doing at the time. And I'm at the point now where that doesn't seem like that many sales. But moving on, what do I think that I did right and wrong during this period? So one of the biggest things here that I started, what was quite a turning point for me here, was that I was striving to increase the quality of my efforts by around 10%. So I know the whole quality over quantity thing doesn't make any sense really, but what I was doing was going into these books with the attitude that they had to be at the very least 10% better than what I was doing before, at least 10% better than that, okay? So that meant researching the niche more, hiring someone better, and actually thinking about how am I going to get eyes onto my book and start taking the emphasis off the things that I knew weren't making that much different, like the keywords and the back-end keywords, the categories and the pricing, and things like that. So there was a shift at this point where I said to myself, it's time to actually start focusing on the quality of the book instead of relying so heavily on these things that don't matter as much, like the keywords and the niches. I'm not saying they don't matter at all, but they won't matter if you don't get the fundamentals correct with your books, okay? So the first thing that I did better this time was to actually research the niche better, okay? So this was something that I completely neglected for the first time, and I know people don't want to hear this. I know it's so boring to think like it's going to make any difference if you actually research a niche, but it does. And everything you do, I promise you, if you put the long-term goal at the front of your mind when it comes to producing books, you're going to have a lot more success in the long run, okay? But I neglected it last time. I didn't care about who was buying the book. Whereas this time in 2021, I did all my research on Amazon. I took a look at what books were selling in the same niche, seeing what they were selling, what the customers liked and what they didn't like, and then tried to implement that into my books as well. And this is one of the reasons that those books have been selling consistently for, I think, well over 400 days now. Granted that it's not huge, but it is a consistent passive income. And I don't think I've got any ads running for these books anymore either. So this was a big eye opener for me that if you want long-term results, you have to put that little bit extra time and effort into your work and really understand what people are looking for. And I promise you that this is a step that you cannot afford to miss out on. So yeah, researching the niche better was a pretty big step for me. It's something I've never really done enough of. So for me, it's a case of when I do niche research now, I go ahead and I look on Amazon. I've got a notepad up on screen the sort of split screen on the monitor, and I go through. I just write down all the different things that I notice within the niche, what people like, what they don't like, what people are doing with their covers, pretty much everything. You want to be taking the data from Amazon that is telling you what is selling, basically. So this is important. Not copying, obviously, but just taking the inspiration, taking the data, and then being able to actually implement that into your book when you produce it, okay? So the second thing that I did here that I felt like I did better was to hire someone better to create the interiors. So like I said before, delegating work is important if you can't do it well enough yourself. That's pretty much a given for any business, obviously. And there's a saying that goes something like, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And that is very, very true. The problem that I had before was paying someone a low amount was that they weren't motivated to work. I basically underpaid them because I was being tight with my money. They didn't communicate well with me. They were late. They made errors. How they produced the images were questionable. And after a while, they told me that if I didn't give them more work, they would just sell the work that they did for me to someone else, to other people, which is obviously a big no-no because you don't want what you have in your books to be showing up anywhere else online, which is obviously extremely unprofessional of them to do. But at the same time, this is what happens when you're tight with money, and I found this out the hard way, is that you won't be respected. It's a bit of a joke to pay someone a tiny amount of money just because you don't have it, and you can expect that to happen to you, these type of things, if you are going to be tight with your money, okay? So I know some people don't have the money to put into it, so they will look to hire someone for a lesser price, but there's nothing anyone can do. Like, this is the way that I approach publishing and what I think works best, and that does involve spending money, investing money. So if you don't have any money to put into this, I can't sit here and say to you like, yes, there's an easy way where you can do all these things the way that I've done them and have the same results without spending any money. Because if I could do this without spending any money, trust me, I would. I'd love to do that. Not hiring people, not spending money on ad campaigns. This is the volume approach is not for me. I've tried it. I don't like it. If you don't have the money, that is something that you'd have to look into. But this is the way that I do things. So, like I say, this time I upped my budget. I was making some decent money with KDP, so I decided it would be good to pay more. I used Upwork this time. I put out some job offerings, found someone who created these 4 or 5 interiors for me. They were pretty good, like a 6.5 out of 10, I think they were. Maybe a 7 out of 10. They were kind of annoying to work with because they had like all the excuses you could possibly imagine for why they couldn't deliver the work sooner. They were pretty rude at times, but they did it all eventually, and it was quite good. Niche appropriate, not best in class, but it was still good. If it wasn't that good, it wouldn't be getting like the 4.5 and 4.6 reviews that it does get. But this was a big step forward for me, not just hiring the first person that came my way. Okay, so the third thing that I think I did right here was to start running ad campaigns. So I know this is kind of strange, like talking about ads, because it feels kind of sinful sometimes to think that, someone's only having success because they're running ads, which is strange because, if you're trying to, build a business ultimately, which is what you're doing here, I'd go as far as saying it's strange to not invest into marketing for your book. But, this is the way that I do things. So basically at this point, I was only just testing ads, 2020, this was just testing ad campaigns. I had one before in 2019 that was going okay, but I wanted to start, running some ads to these coloring books basically. And after a month or so of releasing those books, I tried out some auto campaigns. I didn't really know why I was running them, but it was just good to see some sales come in for them. I didn't really care about the ACoS or anything like that. I didn't know how it was affecting my organic sales or my positioning on Amazon. All I knew it was pretty nice to get some additional sales on my books, right? Additional eyes as well. And that's what's great here is I think I said earlier that I don't have any ads running for this, but I actually have, I think I have one ad campaign from back then that's still running, where the ACoS is getting lower and lower and lower for it. Like it's around like 10% or something crazy, and I just leave it on all the time. And the thing is, because that book has been selling for such a long time, it's got like 100 reviews on it, where it sat around, I think it's 4.5 to 4.6 stars is what it fluctuates between. And when you have good reviews for your books and lots of those reviews, the conversions of your ads are going to be better. So when you leave your good performing ad campaigns going, they're probably going to get better and better over time. And that's why the ad campaign that I was running for this one is now performing so well. And that's the beauty of the long-term vision, is that you can continue to see results for a long time. And especially with your ad campaigns, you can keep these on. But like I say, I didn't know why I was running ads. Like, was I running ads to try and get, make a direct profit, which is really hard. No matter what anyone says, it is very hard to make direct profit from ads. And especially if you're in the UK like me, we have to pay an extra 20% on top of whatever we spend on ads. So it is incredibly hard. You have to be looking around, less than a 20% ACoS to be actually making money. And across those other books, the other coloring books in 2020 that I was running ads to, I'd run them and then turn them off because they were losing money. Like the ACoS was like 40, 50, 60, 70% on some of them. So I'd run them for like a week, turn them off because I was getting scared of losing the money. And they were just pointless. They just lost money. But it was good to start experimenting with them. But at the same time here, the message here is that if you don't know why you're running ads, if you're trying to just, run them because someone says that they're good, you're probably going to end up losing money and just turning them off and never actually being able to, experience the beauty behind running ad campaigns, which we're going to get into in a bit in 2022. But for this time, it was just nice to run the ads, but I didn't know why I was doing it. Ads are great. They are fantastic. They're a vital part of my publishing business, but you're gonna lose money basically if you don't know what you're doing, and I'm going to talk about that in the 2020 section. But it's going to lead me on to the mistakes that I think that I made with this. Okay, so like I say, the first mistake that I think I made here was that I didn't know why I was running ad campaigns. Okay, so for me, there are 3 ways I think you can look at running ads, and they can all work. The first being they keep your book ranked well, because they are additional sales, which means you're telling Amazon that your book is relevant, so your book stays ranked higher. The second being that you make a direct profit over time. So with lots of tweaking and testing, you can make a direct profit from your ad campaigns. It's not easy, but you can do it. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to do it on every campaign, but you can definitely do it. And third, you can use it as part of your launch strategy. Okay, so I feel like what I did wrong here was just run ads for the sake of it and not have any clue as to what I was doing. And this is something that I think is a massive deal, because everyone knows about running ads. Everyone wants to get involved with it. Loads of people are messaging me about it, but hardly anyone really thinks to themselves like, why am I running these ads? Because if you utilize ads correctly, you can massively increase your chances of your book sticking around on Amazon for a long time. Okay, so the second thing that I was doing wrong with ads was cutting off the campaigns, because I spent too much money and it made me uncomfortable. Okay, so the problem here is that if you're not getting enough clicks to your book, how can you possibly tell what is converting for you? If you have to spend, you have to spend money to get this data back from Amazon so that you can adjust it over time. So for example, I had a campaign that was like, I spent like $10, it had 1 sale, but had so many search terms in that campaign. They all had a really low amount of clicks on them, like 1 or 2 clicks per keyword. So it was impossible to know what was working, and I was turning off these whole campaigns because I hated losing money. I didn't give them any chance. I didn't have a budget in mind. And with no budget in mind, you're probably just going to lose money and quit running your ads, okay? Which is what I did for way too many campaigns. I could go on for hours about the mistakes that I made with ads, but I think that's going to be for another video. And I just realized, just looking back at the script I'm reading off at the moment, I've missed the 4th good thing that I did from the 2020 batch. So the 4th good thing that I did here was actually take more time with the book cover. So despite everything that I tend to rally against in my videos, I actually made the book cover in Canva. Call me a hypocrite here, but it kind of made sense to make a more simplistic cover, because those were the type that were performing in the niche. But what I did here was to take one of the images from the interior, and then I colored that in using, I think, either my iPad or Pixlr or some online software. I can't remember what it was. But basically, I colored in half of the image on the front, and it kind of, it just made sense. It gave it that kind of uniform feel to have, an example of what's inside the book on the front cover as well. I always find it weird now when people use random images for their front covers, and not images from inside the book. I think your cover is a great place to showcase what your book is going to be all about. So if you believe in it, you believe in the quality of your images in your interior, then why not show that off on the big stage, which is your book cover. And also with that book as well, I also put sample images from the interior onto the back of the book as well. Okay, so I don't think A+ content was a thing at that time, so there was no other way to really show it off. But then, and I still do this now, was to take like, when making the book cover in Canva, you can put like the spread out of the cover and put some samples of the images on the back. So when the customer looks at the images, the product images, they can see the back cover and see some more samples of that. I tend to just use A+ content now. I think it's way better. But back then, that's what I was doing, and that's what I continue to do now as well. So moving forward again to the mistakes, and the second thing that I did wrong here, and this is going to sound a little bit dumb, I guess, but the biggest mistake I feel like I've made through these books and a lot of my publishing pursuits is not aiming to create the absolute best book in the niche. Okay, so with these books, I knew they were okay. Like, the desire to produce something special just wasn't there, nor did I really have an understanding as to what that was. I just thought, yeah, these books look pretty good, and they sold like they were pretty good as well. I feel like it was fair enough, whatever. But even here, I was kind of just hoping still that the niche would carry the book, but it definitely helped that the books were much better than before, much more in theme with what was selling in that niche. But the lack of ambition was still there. And this is something I feel people really neglect, and that is not being ambitious enough. I'm not saying everyone should have the attitude that they're going to be multi-millionaires from KDP, because they won't. But at least going into each book that you create with the attitude of, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to try and be the absolute best that I can. And the thing here is that even if you don't create the best book in your niche, you're still going to end up with something pretty awesome. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about this in the upcoming section, the 2022 section of this video. And I actually watched a video by a channel that I follow, which is by the Life Graduate, which is Romney Nelson, where he talks about slowing down when it comes to creating your book, slowing down so you can actually create something great. And if you're making a book in a few days, especially a coloring book, it's probably not going to be that great. I think this batch of books maybe took me like a week from start to finish, okay? And in that time frame, even with delegating work, there's only so much that you can get right, only so much that you can perfect. And if you're uploading a book with the attitude that I had here of like, yeah, it's okay, I guess, then you're probably not going to get the most out of it. Think of it this way: when you upload a book onto Amazon, it's going to be there forever. So don't you want to give it like the best chance possible? And I think at this point in the video, some people might be asking themselves, you know, what's the point in all of this? And honestly, I hope that it's just a reality check, and I hope it's motivation, because you're going to see some of the results for my 2022 efforts as well, okay? And, you know, I hope it goes to show that people who don't give up, people that don't cry about every single thing that goes wrong, you know, they're going to be the ones that make this work. And like I said before, you're never going to find that one special video by that one special YouTuber or one special niche that is just going to change everything for you, okay? So this leads me now to 2022. So this is kind of strange how everything started sort of just clicking and working for me here, because you know, but the pinnacle of my publishing approach actually spawned from an early education workbook that I created and showed off on my channel. If you follow the journey of that one, it's like an addition and subtraction workbook. I might put that up on screen or whatever. So since I knew I was going to be showing this book off on my channel and showing people how they can make sales with the software that I was promoting, I thought to myself, like, man, I really need to think about how I create this book so that it has the best chance of making sales possible, because I knew obviously people on the channel were going to be seeing it and using that information to create their own books. And when I created this, I took a way more structured and thoughtful approach than I did before, because I was kind of, you know, nervous, I guess, about showing books off on my channel. And this isn't a case of, you know, the books I was making before were terrible. It was just a case of like, you know, I'd better at least show people I know how to make sales. So I put that little bit more extra thought into it. And it was kind of nice for me, because it was, you know, that extra sort of 10% that I needed at that time as well. And this was a huge turning point for me. Like I say, something has just clicked now at this point, and you've probably seen me show off other books on my channel since then as well. So when I made this book, I was like, you know, I got to know what the audience is. I got to know how I'm going to position it on Amazon. You know, I got to make sales from this if I'm going to look good, basically. I got to not just think about where it's going to end up. I got to think about the long-term goals of it. Think about why I'm running ad campaigns, and just think about everything that I've learned over the years, and building upon that with an even more thoughtful approach. And it worked. And that book has sold like 300 copies or something. So from there, I went on to try and prove a point that KDP can't ever be saturated. So I went on and created these, I think it was like 4 different notebooks. I've got a video about that. I took the most competitive niche that I could possibly find, and I was like, you know, can I take this approach that I had before, put these into notebooks and make them sell? And that worked as well. So out of those 4 or 5 notebooks, I think 2 of them are still ranked around like 90,000 in the store, so they're making decent money every single month. And that was, you know, really motivating for me personally, that I could actually, you know, the strategy that I was taking, everything that I've learned and built upon, was working for pretty much any niche that had traffic going to it, okay? So at this point, I kind of felt like, I could do anything, and that led me to wanting to create more coloring books. So the first book made me, like I said at the start of this video, I think I showed off the amount was $1,200 something last month. This month I'm going to take a guess that it's made around $500. I will put an image up on screen to showcase this. But this is just from a couple books, basically from 2 or 3 books. And this is the point for me where everything has kind of come together. I'm not saying this is the end goal by any stretch of the imagination, but this is the point where things have really made sense to take a more boring approach to publishing, because that's what works, unfortunately. So let's talk about that now. So these coloring books, they are in very competitive niches. I will not lie and tell you that I found some hidden niche, because the reality is that even if you do find a hidden niche, like, people will catch on to it and it will become flooded. Like, that is with any niche. I promise you they will eventually just become flooded. So what I recommend that people do if you're interested in creating less books and getting into these niches is learn how to compete in competitive niches. Okay, so the first thing here that I got right was to make sure that I picked a niche that has a huge demand. Okay, so this is the easiest thing for anyone to do, is to go onto Amazon and find niches that are selling well. You don't need anyone to tell you that a Christmas coloring book is selling well. You don't need anyone to tell you that a swear word coloring book is selling well. Or you don't need anyone to tell you that an inspirational quote coloring book is selling well. You can go onto Amazon, do 2 seconds of research and see that they are selling well. Okay, so that's the first thing that I did here, was to pick a niche that had a ton of traffic going to it. Okay, so to make $1,200 in a month from one book, there has to be demand. Like, there has to be. I'm not saying you can't do that from like a hidden niche or something, because you can. I personally just like to go where I know there's money being spent. Okay, so this has been a complete game changer for me. I know some people are into that whole micro niche thing where you produce hundreds of books every single month just hoping to hit a winner, and that's why when you hear about people's results, that's why a lot of them say, this is not a dig at anyone, I must apologize, it's not a dig, but when people are producing loads of books, they have like 1 or 2 that are making most of their sales, because I think there's an element of luck involved in it. I don't think it's a good thing for people to pursue, basically. And like I say, that's fine for some people. It's just not for me. I feel I'm way too lazy to sit around and just keep pumping out millions of books hoping that I'm going to get lucky. What I want is those big, saturated, competitive, flooded niches to get involved with. The ones that everyone cries about Amazon being flooded with. That's my jam. It's the big boy stuff. That's what I like getting into. And my thought here has always been that just because these niches are competitive, there's not just one way that you can position your book in them. That is crazy to think that, okay? I think that if I can position myself within the niche correctly, or in a different way, I'm going to get eyes on a book that is in a huge niche, which means that I'm pretty much guaranteed to make sales, okay? Provided that we get the other factors right as well. Okay, so the next thing that I did here was, and this is more so to emphasize the point, but that is to research the target audience, which obviously I mentioned in the last section of this video. So this time I went even further, and just to clarify one thing quickly here, like this niche, the coloring book niche, is nothing special. It's the most broad thing you could possibly imagine. It's just like simple coloring books for adults, okay? So nothing special. You've seen these a million times on Amazon before, I'm sure. But I was researching to making sure I knew exactly what the customer was looking for, going through all the reviews, writing them all down on the notepad on the screen, taking snippets of the covers that I liked so that I could send them on to my outsourcers and things like that. Okay, making sure that I knew how thick the lines were going to be, how many pages were the absolute minimum, and then thinking about like what I could do to sort of make my book slightly different to other people's. Okay, because I always talk about adding value to your book, but if you have a really good book in a competitive niche, like a niche that's got lots of traffic going to it, you don't necessarily have to add more than what's already out there. You just have to add something different and get your book onto the front page. Okay, but for this one, it was a case of I did add that little bit extra that I thought people would like. It was kind of like I went with like a consistent, wholesome theme throughout the entirety of the book. Okay, it was nothing special, but again, it was more so a case of making sure that the audience were getting what they come to expect in such a niche. Okay, so the next thing here that I did right was to hire someone very good and keep them happy. Okay, so for these books I hired someone from Upwork again, and I paid them a fair bit more than what I was paying before. Okay, so I made sure to get some samples from them. I checked their feedback on Upwork, make sure that the people who've hired them before had a good experience. And I think I'm going to sound harsh here, but this is a business. Okay, so we can't afford to work with people who are making excuses every 5 minutes, or someone that thinks they know better than what we're asking them for. Okay, they know what their job is, we know what ours is. Okay, so for example, I hired someone before this person to do a test for me, and I asked them to make one small change that I said I'd pay them for. I'd pay them the extra money to make the change to the image, and they replied to me saying, no, it's good enough as it is. And I was like, seriously, like that's not how this works. And people like that you don't want to deal with. And I found this out the hard way. Even if they're going to be offering you a cheaper price, you don't want to work with these people. Okay, I've even had people tell me to F myself because I found out that they were tracing existing images from Google, which they shouldn't be doing that. Okay, like I was paying that person decent money and they were tracing things from Google, which I did like a reverse image check on, found it, called them out on it, and then they got really angry because they got found out. So that is really important that if you are going to hire someone, you make sure they give off a professional vibe. Okay, so the two people that I've been working with for the last few months now are an absolute pleasure to work with. They are incredible. They're on time, they don't make any excuses, they're not rude, they're really easy to work with, and what they produce is really awesome. Okay, and I want to keep my working relationship going with these guys for a long time because they are just so good. So for this to happen, I'm doing things like paying them well, paying them on time, giving them kind of like bonus incentives and just things to be excited for. And when we discuss projects, I'm saying to them like, look, out of these two projects, which ones would you have more fun doing? Would you have more fun doing a swear word coloring book, or would you have more fun doing a dog butt coloring book or something, and then letting them go with the ones that they feel more passionate about creating. Okay, and obviously, of course, it's nice for them to be making decent money because you can tell that they're really passionate about what they do, so they deserve to be paid for being good and professional. Okay, and I do other things as well, like anyone that I work with, I gift my beginners KDP course them, because if that's something they want to pursue at some point, they can do that. And it's amazing actually that these guys who are really talented at designing and illustrating and things, they've tried KDP and they've failed at it massively. So it does, from my perspective, it kind of feels good to help them out should they want to pursue it in future. But overall, it's just nice that both parties feel like they're winning here, they're being fair. And also, just to touch upon that quickly, like, it is quite interesting the amount of people that are good at like designing and illustrating that have tried KDP and have failed with it. And it's a testament to how you need to have more than just one factor going for you. So you can be the best designer on the planet, but if you don't know how to market your book or select the correct niche or whatever, then you're not going to make sales. And the same goes if you know how to market your book, you know how to run your ads and all that type of thing. If you don't have a good book, you're going to probably fail in the long term as well. Okay, so this book, it was around, I think it was 50 pages, which is kind of pretty standard, I guess. But I wrote out all the things that I wanted included inside of this book. Okay, so that's what I wasn't doing before. I wasn't saying like, page 1, I want this to be this, page 2, this, page 3, etc., etc. Okay, which took me a while, but it was in line with what I had researched. Okay, hence why the research is so important, because you can pass that on to the person that you're hiring. And also what I was doing here, and the thing is, when you pay someone well enough and you have a good enough relationship going with them, like if you do want changes, most people will be happy to make them, provided that they're not like, start the whole thing again type of thing. Like there were a few pages where I was like, this looks a little bit strange, can we just change these lines here, or just shift this across, or change this text type of thing, and they'll be happy to do it. So communicating with the person that you hire is very, very important. Again, everything you think about long term, you think that little mistake that you've seen in your book, you think in a year's time someone would have probably noticed that, and that might be reflected in a review. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you get everything as right as humanly possible. Okay, so the next thing here, again, moving on to the book cover, and we're kind of covering things that we've already spoken about the importance of, but I always talk about trying to make things better and better and better. So what I did for these books here was I actually to spend more time and more money on these. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I give them the best chance I could of getting clicks on them. I want to make them look beautiful and really enticing. So I took a long time having these book covers made, and I think just for me to decide on the cover for one of them, the one that sold loads, I think it took me 2 weeks to decide which cover to go with. So what I did here was I hired the person who illustrated the interior to color in one of those pages, basically. Okay, so they charged me like $30, I think, to color in one of the pages, which I felt like was an hour's work, which was pretty fair. It looked really awesome, really wholesome and cute, perfect for the audience. I loved it, and they even included like the title of the book on it as well. But that she did not nail at all. It was very, I don't know why this person in particular isn't particularly good. I hope they're not watching this video, but they're not that good at making book covers. But the image they colored in was beautiful. And I then went on, and this is where I'm going to be learning myself here for making not mistakes, but what I can do better. I then went on to hire someone basically just to put the text onto this cover. I paid them $20 to put text on the cover because they said they were good. They sucked, and it made the book cover look horrible. Okay, so what I did here, after like looking at 4 or 5 different versions that everyone has made for me, I looked at it and it just didn't feel good. Like everything felt off. The style wasn't quite right. No matter how good the image looked colored in, the text and the title or whatever on it, the author name, it just looked weird, and it just looked wrong. And I just thought, I'm not gonna publish this book until it looks the way that I think it should look. So since it was a case of just needing text at this point, I took the cover into Canva and used a font that I downloaded from CreativeFabrica, placed it onto the cover, moved it around a lot. I looked at it, I walked away from the screen, I came back, looked at it again, walked away, looked at it again, walked away, looked at it again, went to bed, woke up, looked at it again and again and again and again, and it still didn't feel quite right. There was something I was noticing on the book cover that just doesn't feel quite right. So I tried a different font, different placement. I looked at it again and again and again and again. You get the point here, okay? I was looking at this over the course of those 2 weeks hundreds of times, and then I finally decided on the font and the placement of the font that I went with. Okay, so the big thing here is that I didn't just go with the first effort. I went with the one that gave me those good vibes. Okay, I asked a few other people as well. I put some of the covers side by side, and every single person I asked went for the one that I was feeling good about. So once I had enough sort of confirmation, I was like, you know what, that's the book cover, that's the one I'm going to go for. And I know some people, they're like, oh, I need to stop obsessing over my book covers. I've spent a whole day obsessing over it. I say don't stop. I say obsess more. Drive yourself absolutely mental with it, because I promise you it's going to be worth it. You make 20 different covers, 200 different versions, whatever. If you have to ask 200 different people, if that helps, then do that. But just don't settle for, yeah, I think that's okay. In fact, as I'm writing the script for this video, I have the book cover for my next book on the side of the screen just sitting here, and I'm looking at it on and off the whole time. Because there's something there, again, that just doesn't look quite right to me. I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep changing that until that is right as well, okay? And just to clarify that this is what is important for me in my publishing goals, which is to produce less books but make them, premium quality, basically. I know some people go the whole route of creating, the low content books, and lots of them that people might buy as a gift. So if people are buying stuff as gifts for Christmas, I think there is something to be said for just producing lots of books in okay niches with okay book covers, and then hoping that you get sales during Q4. I think that that's a thing, people do that. I have one book like that sells like crazy during Christmas myself, but it's just not what I want to do, and that's why I take so much time over everything that I produce now. Okay, so the next thing that I feel like I did right here was to run ads for a reason. So I touched upon running ads in the last section where I kind of just ran them to see, whatever happened. But over the last 2 years, I must have spent $4,000 to $5,000 on ad campaigns, which isn't insane, but it is enough to get an idea as to how to use them and how to use them correctly. So with this book, I used the ads to kind of launch them. Because I do think the first 30 days of your book going live is an important period. You want to be telling Amazon that your book is converting well and making sales, and running ads is a really good way to do that. But the thing is, I had in mind that when I ran the ads, it would be to make sure my book ends up on the first page for the keyword that I wanted it to. So if you're in my bootcamp, you know that I've got a specific way of doing these things. It's nothing special, it's just logical. But basically, if I have a book that is a caterpillar coloring book or whatever, if that's the niche of the book, then that's going to be the title. If it's a logical search term, so if you're producing a caterpillar coloring book, then the search term that people are probably going to be looking for is going to be caterpillar coloring book, or one of the search terms would be something like that. I don't use any keyword software or niche software or anything like that. I just use a little bit of logic, and then what I found is that when I run ads, I will pretty much always get ranked on the first page for that keyword. So if my keyword was caterpillar coloring book, if I ran ads, any type of sale that I got would then boost that book onto the first page for that search term. It's as simple as that, basically. But obviously there's more that goes into it. But that's the basics of it, okay? So, the early stages here, when it comes to running ad campaigns, it's unlikely that you're going to make a direct profit. So I don't really care about the ACOS. Like, my ACOS sometimes goes up to 100% or more than that, because I'm not too worried. I can adjust this over time, turn things off. But for the start, the launch, there is some thought that goes into it regarding the niche, the keyword, and the ad campaigns. I don't care about the ACOS. I want my book ranked. Okay, so once it gets ranked, you'll find that you're going to start making sales quicker because you're in a big niche, and then from there you kind of look at that snowball effect happening. Okay, so the good thing here about running ads is that it can give you that initial boost onto first pages, and if your book is good enough, then it will start picking up organic sales from those first pages. And then from there, you're going to be looking at the sort of whole snowball effect thing where you start showing up on other people's recommended products and things like that. Okay, so that's the beauty of running ads to your book. And I found, I tested this a lot. Trust me, I've done a lot of testing here. Is that if you don't, it doesn't take much to get your book ranked onto the first page for your desired search term. In fact, 1 or 2 sales, obviously it depends on the niche, but 1 or 2 sales can boost your book from nowhere to getting ranked onto the first page. I promise you, I've tested this across the last 10, 15 books or whatever. It happens every single time. And I found that if I don't run any ads to the book, then the book never turns up for the search term anywhere near the first page. Okay, that's just me. That's what I've found. And that's why I use ads, for a reason, to get it ranked. Okay, so over time, it's not been long enough for me to optimize these ads, but I've turned a lot of them off because they were losing money. I felt like they couldn't be optimized or tweaked enough, so I turned some of them off, and I've left the ones that are kind of 20% ACOS or lower. I've left those ones on. Okay, so what I was doing, I could go on for hours about ads, but what I was doing was getting the book ranked and then switching ones off that I didn't want when I thought it had a good organic ranking, and then tweaking the ones that were working, and I'll continue to do that over time. Okay, let's move on to the next next good thing that I did here, because once I start talking about ads, I will never ever stop. So the next good thing that I did here was to give the book a kind of branded feel. So this is something that I'm kind of new to. I want to make a big thing out of my book brand and my author name. I want it to be recognizable. I want the name to be recognizable and not just another indie author that just pumps out loads of books. I want it to be special, to have a sort of unique feel to my book. So what I did after the first book was to release the second book under the same brand name, same strategies as before. And while it's not doing as well as the first, it still performs a few $100s each month at the moment. But what I noticed is that in the frequently bought section, people are buying those two books together, which is quite telling about their quality. And people are doing this because they're starting to associate my brand name with quality. And if they trust me enough to buy multiple products from me, then I think that's going to be a good sign, right? And that's the importance when it comes to having like a sort of premium brand feel to your books, okay? And while these books aren't, obviously they're not exactly the same, but they are geared toward the same adult audience. They have a similar style, so people know what they're going to be getting. And I want to keep that consistent as I release more books under this pen name, so people know, what type of quality they're going to be getting, basically. And it's great because people, they will buy multiple books from you. They will, I don't have an author central page set up for this. People must just come back and look for my other books under that pen name, and buy the other books as well. Okay, so I feel like I did quite a lot of things right here, but what about the things that I did wrong? So actually the second book that I released got a 1-star review pretty much straight away, which was very suspicious because it only sold like 2 copies at the time, I think it was, and I know the quality was really good, and it wasn't a written review either. And since then, the book has had nothing but 5-star reviews on it. So it's very hard to say what would have been wrong with the book to warrant a 1-star review, because since it's, it wasn't a written review, it could have been something like the person not liking the paper quality. It could have been something like a bent page, or they accidentally bought it, or, maybe they just weren't happy with what they got. Like, that is the reality. And unfortunately, you're never going to please everyone, and these things will happen. You're going to get reviews that are complete BS, and it's going to make you mad, but you do have to just plow through it and, continue just to produce books, the best that you can. And a lot of people, or some people on Amazon, will be like, oh, I can get this book for like $2 cheaper in my local shop. And it's like, yes, well, it's because you don't have any Amazon fees attached to something in your shop, you moron. But yeah, it's the way that it is. But aside from that, which isn't necessarily my mistake, I think I could have worked a little bit harder on the A+ content. I didn't actually mention this in the previous points here when I should have done. A+ content is a great way to show off the interior for your book, to make your sales page basically look a lot nicer. I'm really bad at creating them. It's something that I could do with working on, but I think any kind of A+ content that you put out that does show off the interior is going to help increase your book sales. They say it should be like around 10% increase, but I don't know how they've worked that out, but it could be less, it could be more. But either way, you have that option to create A+ content and show off your book. Utilize it. It's fantastic. Do it for all of your coloring books if you are producing them. Aside from that, I feel like on the second book I could have included more pages. I sort of gave myself a budget for what I was when I was hiring someone, and I didn't want to go over it, so I sort of skimped a little bit and did 40 instead of 50 illustrations. It would have been nicer to have had 50. Maybe I should have done that. But, other than that, I feel like I did a lot of things quite well. But for any of these things that I did wrong here, I feel like it's been extremely important for me to practice what I preach, and that is to always try and make your books 5 to 10% better than the last one in whatever way possible, which is what I've been doing here basically. And I know it can be hard to do, but trust me, over time, if you have this attitude with every book you create, you're going to look back at your older books and realize how far that you've come, because you won't realize it at the time until you adopt this attitude of creating your books better and better and better and better. Okay, I promise you. And I do feel like this is one of those individual things that does have to come from within and to take place over time. I don't think you're going to watch any video or any, whatever, you're not going to watch anything or be told anything that is instantly going to flip that switch for you. It's a journey, and that's why everyone's results and success will be different and take longer or shorter, basically. So like I say, that doesn't mean that I feel like I got everything right. Obviously, that's a nice amount of money. It's during Q4, so I'm going to expect that to drop, considerably in January and so on. But the thing is, once you have good books, once they start picking up sales, is that they will make sales for a long time, especially during Q4. Like some of the coloring books from 2021, they're selling really well this Q4. Okay, so I expect them to sell well next Q4, and I also expect the new batch of coloring books to sell well next Q4 as well, when they have even more reviews on them. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything for my coloring book journey. My personal feelings have been all over the place during these periods, like filled with highs and lows. And I wanted to kind of end the video on that note, because I know when like YouTube KDP people make videos about their results, it kind of just feels like it's been easy. But a lot is missed out here that goes on behind the scenes, like feelings that you're probably experiencing and have experienced. And this is way more normal than you think. Like the amount of times I've wanted to quit and have quit has been as much as anyone. I can guarantee you that even during the last couple of years where things have been going really well, and as sad as it sounds, not quitting will always be and always has been the secret sauce. And it is much easier to quit than actually put your head down and say, screw it, I'm going to do this and not stop until it works. And the thing is, when you're not doing well with something and you are discussing this with other people who are not doing well, you will hear every excuse under the sun. And I have heard every excuse you could imagine from people on my Facebook and emails telling me not to bother with coloring books and competitive niches, and the only way you can make sales is by niching down a billion times and producing 500 books a month. And now that I'm actually making sales, the same people are telling me it's only because I've uploaded books in 2018. I was early to the party, but I can assure you I was late to whatever the party that was. And the whole notion that you need to spend literal thousands of dollars on ads every single month to compete in big niches is also complete BS. It's coming from people that have no clue what they are saying. In fact, my ad spend, I'll try and get a snippet up on screen in a second. I think for those coloring books, it's like $20 to $30 this month after the first 2 weeks of December. It's hardly anything. It's less than last month. And I think that book has made $500 this month already. So, looking at possibly $1,000 of profit on that book again this month. And this is why I think it's so important for your success going forward. And I know this is a little bit strange to include in a publishing video, because I'm not sure who else feels this way or has ever felt this way. So I don't know who is resonating with this type of thing here. But, if you're motivated with something, if you have a dream, you want to be successful, especially in the online domain, is that you share your time with like-minded people who don't bring you down, who don't try and bring you down and try and dump on every single desire that you have. I had this years ago where when I first started the whole online thing, people telling me to get a real job, friends telling me that I had a dumb pipe dream. And because of this, I even stopped the dream back in like 2015. I gave up. I had way too many negative people around me, and it just it rubbed off of me to the point where I stopped. Like I say, I don't know how many people are in this sort of situation now, but honestly, like, who should be allowed to tell you what you can and can't do with your life, especially when it comes from people that don't have an ounce of ambition in their body? But for me, I love people telling me what I can't do now. It's the best feeling to shut these people up. And I don't know, I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. I think the whole KDP scene and online money making scene has become so robotic and professional almost that this mental side of things doesn't ever get mentioned, because I do think it can make people feel like they're doing something wrong, or they're not cut out for it just because they failed with a few things, or they've had that urge to quit at some point. But I think I'm going to stop myself there, as I'm going to start ranting about things that aren't that interesting for people to listen to. That's pretty much it for the video. Like I hope this has given you a good insight into my journey from 2019 to 2022 with coloring books. Hope it gives you a good idea as to the things that have been working for me, the things that I've put emphasis on, the things that I've taken emphasis away from. And I hope this gives you a good idea as to how you can go forward and start actually cutting out the mistakes that I've been made, so that you can get onto that successful path of publishing much quicker. And also, like I say, this is the last video from me for 2022. It's been a good year, but I got really good feelings about 2023. If you've watched all this video, then I'm eternally grateful. I always am. I know I don't produce as many videos as I could, but when people do listen to it and watch my videos, it means the world to me. And I'm just happy that people have made it this far into the video. But anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you have a good whatever you might be celebrating in New Year, and I'll see you in 2023.